For your convenience, please turn your cameras and microphones off during the webinar. The webinar will begin momentarily. For questions and comments, please use the chat located in the center of the bottom of your screen. The webinar will begin momentarily. Real ID is a passionate and committed team. Through entertainment technology, we contribute to our clients' social and professional development. We offer a comprehensive service that responds to new challenges and has established our active international presence. We provide our clients with the right balance between their needs and our platform's optimal performance. We seek precise solutions for the continued use of legacy systems and, where appropriate, development of required applications. Real ID has grown thanks to the port and maritime industry's safety and security needs. Each of our modules are managed by a simulated artificial intelligence called Sole, capable of learning scenarios and finding solutions according to the end user's requirements. Hello, and welcome to this webinar, operated and sponsored by Real ID. For your convenience, please turn your cameras and microphones off during the webinar. For your convenience, please turn your cameras and microphones off during the webinar. The webinar will begin momentarily. For questions and comments, please use the chat located in the center of the bottom of your screen. The webinar will begin momentarily. Real ID is a passionate and committed team. Through entertainment technology, we contribute to our clients' social and professional development. We offer a comprehensive service that responds to new challenges and has established our active international presence. For your convenience, please turn your cameras and microphones off during the webinar. For questions and comments, please use the chat located in the center of the bottom of your screen. We will now start the webinar.
Hello, good morning. I hope everybody can hear me. My name is Jorge Duran. I am the Chief of the Secretariat of the Inter-American Committee on Ports of the Organization of American States, and I would like to welcome all of you to our webinar on disaster risk management in ports, strategies for coordinated preparedness, response, and recovery. Thank you very much to our speakers who are participating with us today. I will let Mona Swoboda from the SIP Secretariat, who will also be moderating this webinar, let her introduce to you each of the panelists. But before we do start, it's just important, first of all, to welcome you all to this webinar, to tell you that, in fact, we have registrations from 37 countries, from Argentina to Australia, Aruba, Barbados, Bangladesh, Benin, Brazil, Belize, the Cayman Islands, Chile, Colombia, Costa Rica, Dominican Republic, Ecuador, Great Britain, Grenada, Greece, Guatemala, Guyana, Honduras, India, Jamaica, Mexico, Nigeria, Panama, Peru, St. Kitts and Nevis, Spain, Suriname, Tanzania, Trinidad and Tobago, the United States, Uruguay, Venezuela, the Virgin Islands, and Zambia. So welcome to all of you. And this, indeed, this highly eclectic mix of countries participating here shows the relevance of disaster risk management, the relevance of ensuring that where there is a natural disaster, and the Caribbean just escaped this latest hurricane that took off towards the U.S. East Coast and northwards, and we just missed it. But whether it's a natural disaster such as a hurricane or an earthquake or a volcanic eruption, or a man-made disaster, whether it's an oil spill or a cybersecurity attack, what we need to focus on, and what these three speakers are here to tell us, are best practices and different contingencies on how to mitigate that risk, how to manage that disaster, and how to, very importantly, resiliency, how to get back on business continuity. We need ports in any sort of emergency, whether humanitarian relief of this or natural disaster. This is the point of entry for that aid and for those supplies, whether they're medical or food or whatnot. So we need to pay special attention to our ports and to their capability to be resilient and to ensure business continuity so that the supply chain is not interrupted. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much again for your kind attention. And I will turn over the webinar to Mona, because you guys are all here to listen to the experts and not to me. However, I just wanted to say hello. I will be back at the end to bid you farewell. But in the meantime, just before I go, I'd like to make a special thank you to Monica Blanco from the SIP Secretariat for organizing, as well as Mona for moderating, and obviously Martin Santillan and Daniel Guerrero from Real ID, our technological partner in this endeavor. So thank you very much. Mona, you have the floor.
Thanks so much, Jorge, for those lovely welcome remarks. I'm Mona Swoboda, Program Manager at the SIP OAS, and I'm very excited to be with all of you here today. We all know, and Jorge mentioned this earlier in his remarks, that the key to effective disaster risk management is collaboration, right? So whether it's ports, maritime services, shipping, a disaster doesn't discriminate between the sectors. And that's why it's crucial that we come together as stakeholders to create resilient systems that can withstand and recover from any type of disruption. Jorge mentioned earlier, natural disasters, cyber incidents, right? Any type of disruption. So this webinar today is designed not only to share lessons learned or best practices here by our distinguished group of experts, but it's also aimed to foster an environment where knowledge exchange can lead to more robust solutions for communities and economies. And we'll hear from our experts. They come from nonprofits and industry to regional organizations, and they will share their experiences in building these integrated cross-sector frameworks. And I hope this encourages you all to think about your organization's role and how it fits into this larger picture. As we dive into the presentations, I would like to take a moment to introduce our distinguished speakers. Each of them bring invaluable expertise from their respective organizations, and we're thrilled to have them today. Our first speaker is Jennifer Nugan-Hill. She's the Director of Government and Community Affairs at Tropical Shipping. Jennifer has been a member of the management team at Tropical Shipping since 1995 and currently helps guide her company's leadership team on its public policy agenda and manages the Tropical Shipping Community Relations and Charitable Donations Program. She has shared responsibility for the company's disaster management and business continuity program plans. Jennifer is well known for her distinguished public policy and community engagement service in Florida, the wider Caribbean, and her home island, St. Croix, U.S. Virgin Islands. She is the chairperson of the Ocean Coastal Observers Virgin Islands Board, a member of WISTA, a former at-large council member of WEMAC. She's also executive council member of the North Palm Beach Chamber of Commerce, Caribbean Private Sector Organizations Business Council, and serves on the board of the American Caribbean Maritime Foundation. She holds a master's degree in public administration and a Bachelor of Social Welfare Science. She's a certified business continuity professional from the Disaster Recovery International Institute, as well as a certified professional leader from People Tech Inc. Jennifer is passionate about sharing insights with young people on the value of developing a culture of preparedness mindset for disaster resiliency's sake and their personal preparedness for life in the beautiful Caribbean. Jennifer, I pass it on over to you.
Wow, thank you. Thank you so much, Mona. I'm always happy to be a part of what the OAS SIP is doing in the region, be it the Caribbean, my space and place, or the rest of the wider Americas, Central America and Latin America for sure. So thank you for organizing this. I recall when we did this a few years ago, I could not help but talk about what an incredible opportunity it is for my organization as a user of ports, as a partner in 32 locations throughout the Caribbean. We always say from Canada, Halifax, where we begin movements of goods, to the port of Palm Beach here in Florida, where I work and live, to Guyana. So we refer to ourselves as a partner that moves goods on a water highway, the ocean highway from Halifax, Canada, to the beautiful country of Guyana. So thank you for extending this invitation. This is a real significantly important part of our work as a company, because we are always looking at what are the risks that are associated with the areas where we operate. And it could be Canada, where there are snowstorms and ships get frozen over in ports in Halifax, to the beautiful locations in the region where all of us are familiar with some of the natural disasters and that plagues us, as you correctly stated, whether it's a volcanic activity, an earthquake, or that of weather systems. So what I'd like to share with you from my perspective as the person who oversees the reviewing of our plans, that every single one of our island locations, all 32 places where our ship goes and where our staff and team operates, and our partners in the markets, and most importantly, all the stakeholders that are dependent on a consistent service, regardless of whether a storm is coming in, a storm has passed, and the speed of which we can work with the governments, the ports, or the terminal operators in any of the location to really apply what we all know is necessary, are coordinated strategies with regards to preparedness, response, and recovery. So for me, the next few minutes, I'd just like to share with you as we move the slides along to just talk about how collaboration works for a user on the private sector side to the entities that are responsible for the operation supports. One of the things that came across my feed yesterday that I thought, wow, it was an article that I read with regards to best practices, and the title of it was From Crisis to Continuity, Building Resiliency Against These Unpredictable Threats. One of the things that I know very well is that while we talk about natural disasters, there are those man-made. We know that cyber threats are a natural part of what we all need to be thinking about because it's happening, and it's happening especially, unfortunately, a lot to ports across the globe. So I don't, wherever you are, and I appreciate the fact that we've got 37 nations or countries represented on this call today. So the next slide, please. We just concluded a week ago, and I wanted the slide, that slide that was just there was where we kicked off our annual support for public-private partnership, and we did that in Antigua. So I wanted to leave that slide up there for my friends from Antigua to say to them, thank you, CDEMA, for being a part of what we were able to launch back in March, or rather May this year, as we kick off these annuals, our preparations for getting our communities ready to think about. I thought I would share this with you because since we've got the world on the stage this morning listening to these presentations, I always am fascinated with this slide because what you're seeing is just one day of ships at sea in our region. And I'm always asking myself, how do we do this and do it as well as we've been capable of doing, knowing that the threats that are out there are real? So you can always go on that link that's on the slide if you want to snap that and do marinetraffic.com. It is fascinating to see how ports really manage the amazing amount of ships that are moving. And I don't care whether the port is a small port like in Anguilla or in Ceiba, or big ports like what is in the US and in our space where we operate here from the Port of Palm Beach, or to the countries of Jamaica that does it so well in managing those ports. Next slide. So one day of ships at sea is a significant thing. So how do we manage, from our perspective as a carrier operating in these ports? I want to share with you some key principles of the cycle of disaster management as we view it. Having the background of disaster preparedness and having to do the best thing that I could do for my company, which was to become a certified business continuity. So my job might be focused on government affairs, but it's part and parcel as we see it as our community engagement program. So having to become a certified continuity planner in order to help my company develop the best practices that we can, we have to identify what those key principles in the cycle of disaster management as those professionals who are engaged in the process. So we always say a rapid and well-coordinated plan is necessary and critical if we're going to be able to respond and recover speedily in the ports. Those of us who pay attention to disaster preparedness focuses on the 4 phases in disaster management, which suggests one of the things that we're doing today is preparation. All of us on this call are really being reminded of the necessary phase of phase 1, which is the preparation. So this re-education or this conversation or this discussion is really what I would refer to as part of the preparation. It also involves a series of steps that we can talk about later. And the idea behind that is to respond when the incident or the crisis or the disaster has occurred. And we scale up when we talk about response, incidences, crisis, and a disaster. Disaster usually when it's declared by the government that it is in fact a disaster because it's wide and it's impacting all aspect of a country or an island, in this case, for us in this case, operationally. And then, of course, that cycle takes us, once we've recovered, we go back into the mitigation. I always say to partners that none of us can prevent a crisis or a disaster. What we can do is mitigate the impact of that through preparation, best response plan, and recovering. And then we continue the cycle of learning to mind the gaps wherever we found the areas. And then I call the fifth one now. This is just me. I won't spoil it for those professionals when CDEMA comes on, or GSD will tell you that there are 4 cycles. But for me, the fifth one is about partnership. Partnership suggests collaboration. I've learned over the 30 plus years that I've been doing this that you cannot recover in from any disaster if there is not collaboration and partnership. And the private sector must be at the table. That's been one of the most clarion call that I have been able to force that issue. And I have to tell you that the partnership that we now have with CDEMA and all of the locations that we move our vessels in and out, that we're part and parcel, a part of those local emergency management agencies planning. The ports have to be the lifeline in order to get the economies up and running. So you'll notice that I say a key principle here is our ports as lifeline for the rapid and timely response, extremely critical in the recovery process. I don't care which community we are, large or small. And then this is a pet peeve of mine, and I feel privileged to be able to say this, that the principle in the cycle of disaster management best practices is to depoliticize the issue, the mindset for all of us, depoliticize the importance of ports and the local emergency management authorities or agencies. And I say that with all honesty, that I think lots of us are now watching what's happening as we talk about response and recovery, that the professionals in the disaster management field should not be subjected, when you are a skilled professional, have done this over and over and developed best practices. And I say that with all respect for the ability for governments to do what they choose to do in hiring their officials. But when it comes to the professionalizing of this response mechanism to get us up and running quickly, we need to talk about priority funding for the professionals and depoliticize disaster management agencies wherever they are. And again, finally, I'd like to say that strong leadership is a must. There must be someone who's in charge. We all cannot be in charge. Identifying that person in the cycle of the disaster response and recovery strategy requires leadership. Operational excellence. And here is where I'd like to commend the OSCIP team for what they've done. Their disaster plan template document that will be dropped in the chat for you who may not be familiar with that, they created what is a model emergency operational plan that is easily scalable. It is a template that you can take away parts from, things that may not be relevant to you. So I encourage you, and thank you. I see that it's been dropped, it's been placed there. If you have never looked at what the CIP has done, please do so. I know they're planning upgrades, and I'm sure Mona and the team will share that. Essential workers are port operators. Essential workers are folks who get the economy up and running. Opening the ports, getting the workers back up and running means we got to take care of them. Next slide. Essential workers is about building port resiliency. It starts with a consideration of people and people first. What we are, who are professionals in business continuity, will tell you that it is always about that circle. It is about the people whom we're charged with taking care of in our marketplace. It's the people who are planning today so we can recover tomorrow. And it is always going to be the professionals first that are at ports, responsible for the opening and the reopening of port, preparation of the ports for a particular storm, or maybe recovering strategies for the impact from an earthquake or volcanic activity. Next slide. So when we talk about strategic partnership and collaboration and cooperation, I want to share this picture with you. This happens to be one of our vessels in Puerto Rico, our beautiful our regional manager, Maria Rodriguez, who is a stalwart about how ports and strategic engagements with our partnership works. A few years ago, we thought it was necessary for us to be able to say, how do we collaborate in our space in Puerto Rico, for example, in U.S. Virgin Islands, with the ports authorities, but also with the federal partners who are responding to a disaster, in our case in the U.S., FEMA. And one of the things that we learned was that not all ports are equal in their ability to take landing crafts, to be able to have vessels come in and out of ports. So our strategic partnership and engagement around how we respond to our ports in the region is that all ports are different. In our case, our vessels are designed to go into shallow drafts in some location. Someplace the bigger vessels need that 30, 40 feet draft to be able to smoothly go in. But we learned a lesson from this incident, and this picture was taken from Anguilla, and it was a devastation that required for us to be able to assist the response from the federal side, in this case, the UK OT and the Royal Navy, to be able to get into the island and to be able to support their citizens and the people. So strategic partnership and cooperation is required if your ports are going to be able to immediately and speedily recover. On to the next slide. There is no way any organization can afford to be operating without a business continuity plan. We term it shortened BCP. The cost of not having a well-developed business continuity plan is too high. You simply will not be able to recover if you don't have a plan. And every plan must concern themselves with the disaster risk areas, such as what we term for us in the Caribbean, where we go to 32 different locations. So you cannot, no matter what organization you are, you cannot afford to function without a BCP, a business continuity plan. Next slide. We ask our partners, how do you think about a continuity plan? What a BCP does strategically is to prepare the organization, in this case, ports, and their team to respond effectively. It minimizes the effect of a disaster because the speed of which we can capture and recover and take care of minding the gap enhances strategically the readiness and the preparedness of a port. And it also helps you, I think, to control the outcome of the impact from a disaster, because a disaster will happen. Incidences and crises will occur. The idea of a business continuity plan is to help you control the outcome from the disaster. So it's strategic that you do have a business continuity plan and view it as part of your preparedness strategy. Next. I share this picture because this is one of our partners' sister company that was able to move immediately through this cooperation to take into Puerto Rico when we had the devastation of Hurricane Maria. We were able to have one of our sister companies' barge immediately take thousands of bucket trucks to help with the restoration of electricity, get energy up and running so the island can do part of its recovery. These things doesn't happen overnight. There is no one that's going to talk to you in the midst of a crisis about the resources. We did this as part of the preparedness strategy through a cooperative and coordinated partnership that allowed for some of this to move very rapidly to support Puerto Rico in its recovery of that devastation of Hurricane Maria. Next slide. I believe that the essential plan must start with your leadership. Whomever your prime minister, your president, the head of your ministry for business continuity, we call those executive sponsorship. No plan. If the port leadership is not engaged and be a part and truly engage and really be the sponsor, no one else will. The community will not, the private sector will not be engaged. So executive sponsorship is a must. Port leadership must step aside and recognize that this is to get your economy up and running. The ports are necessary. And so it's an essential part of the strategy around a business continuity. I also want to say, for those who may not be familiar, and I know there are a lot of you that have written plans that are on this call, so this is a redundancy lesson. In order to have an effective plan, you must know the risk. So conducting a test of your vulnerabilities and writing the plan towards what those vulnerabilities are and addressing your plan to respond to those risk factors. I must tell you that I had to add the phrase now, the use of technology. Artificial intelligence can help you really, really well zone in on your risk, the impact of those risks, and what you can do to use AI to help you write a plan, give you the time frame for how much hours you can afford to be down or how many days and what the costs are. Please embrace technology in the use of doing risk analysis. And then absolutely the final thing about this part of the essentialness of a plan is that you must have a backup plan to the backup plan. Determine what happens when your personnel are impacted and how you would in fact allow the ports to be able to resource or get resources from elsewhere. So have a backup plan to the backup plan. That's an essential strategy for writing an effective plan. Next. And as we come towards where I think I want to bring to this table, I know all of you are thinking about it. Those of us in the maritime space today understand the threat of cyber attacks. There is absolutely concerns with regards to the movement of ships. We're using a lot of technology in and out of ports. Ports are becoming technologically advanced. It is a necessary component for safety at sea, security of vessels, the movement of cargo on a ship, what they are that's coming into port. And so a lot of information are being shared electronically. My concern continues to be how ready we are, how resilient we are with our cyber security plans. I won't get into that because someone else is going to speak a little bit about that. But I encouraged us that this is a factor that's impacting the region in ways the Caribbean I can speak about. I'm sure the rest of the world that's on this call understands that as well. But cyber and the maritime sector is a factor. And then in wrapping up through the next two slides, I just want to make reference to the next slide that talks about the strategic action. You must ensure strategically that the safety of your personnel. You got to plan for them during the storm. Prior to the storm, prior to an incident, what happens to them and their families. If the staff, if your personnel doesn't have assurance that their families will be taken care of in ways that allows them to get out. In our company, we assure our employees that if they're impacted, the organization will be sure to take care of them and their families so they can get back up to doing what they do very well. So if you don't have plans for your personnel or your employees, please, your plan is weak. It's not strategic and it will not render you effective. Exercise the plan. We must test our plans. And believe you me, we write plans, we put them on the shelf and no one knows what to do when there's an incident. It allows you, I think, for operational stability, and ports, as I said earlier, are strategically necessary, essential to the recovery of their marketplace or your communities or your countries or your islands. It also, I think, assures the markets and the stakeholders, so customers, consumers, citizens, residents, visitors, outside partners, all need to know that the ports have become strategic in writing emergency operating plans that assures us that in short order, we can in fact get back to a sense of normalcy. Will it be perfect? Will it be ready in 6 months? No, devastation are of all scale and magnitude. But there's something about an assurance when a company can in fact demonstrate that it has a real strategic plan to get up and running. That's what I call resiliency. And this final slide, next, is really to demonstrate how when you cooperate with each other, when you have a coordinated plan, for those reasons why I said CDEMA for us in the Caribbean, and if your local emergency management agency is a coordinated, I can't speak to what's happening in other countries or other nations, but from the Caribbean, this is an example of an incident that occurred, and I don't remember which storm this was, but this was the Royal Navy's helicopter needed to get some essential emergency life-preserving materials to a small island in the Turks and Caicos. It was devastated by the storm and could not get a landing craft in. We were able to lift a container. And so I show you that air and sea can communicate, can work. It's a perfect picture of how we were able to support the United Kingdom Royal Navy in lifting a container that had essential supplies and be able to drop it in a place that the port had been affected. So I want to encourage you to really take a look at this and keep it in your mind that collaboration, partnership, and coordination are necessary. So I thank you for your time. And the final slide was to just remind you of who we are and why we do what we do by being strategic in your from crisis to continuity, building resiliency. So thank you. Mona, back to you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, for those insightful remarks. And I'm very much looking forward to hearing more about the work that Tropical is doing as it relates to business continuity and disaster risk management later on in the Q&A. And thank you for that shout out about the SIP Model Emergency Operations Plan. My colleague Monica, she dropped the link in the chat, so feel free to take a look at that. And thank you again very much, Jennifer, and I'll see you later on in the Q&A. Thank you. Our next speaker is Brad Milliken, Director of Maritime Operations at Global Support and Development. Brad's background includes supporting federal and international emergency and disaster management operations in various leadership roles with the United States Coast Guard, National Guard Bureau, Pacific Disaster Center, White House Operations Center, and Global Support and Development, where he's currently the Maritime Director. In addition to his work at GSD, Brad is a faculty member and adjunct professor at the University of South Carolina's Arnold School of Public Health, where he teaches courses relating to crisis and disaster leadership. A former search and rescue team leader, Brad has spent the majority of his career focusing on operationalizing non-traditional actors for disaster response. Brad, please.
Thanks, Mona. And yeah, thanks to everybody for being here and for this opportunity. Excited to talk to you a little bit about what GSD is doing in the maritime space. And yeah, thanks for having me. Sharing slides. Okay. All right, so GSD, Global Support and Development. GSD is a US-based humanitarian organization. We focus primarily on disaster preparedness and disaster response in the Caribbean basin, with the primary goal of implementing effective disaster response as the means to bring about successful and quick disaster recovery. All of this based on a hypothesis that successful disaster recovery is not something that happens to you. Durability is not something that happens to you. Resilience is not something that happens to you. These are all things that we must pursue. These can't be things that we just react to, that these are all proactive measures. When we talk about bridging gaps between the maritime industry, port preparedness, and our humanitarian colleagues, our disaster management colleagues, these are some of the figures that we come through. So 200 seaports across 21 nations in the Caribbean basin. You have 12 solely island or archipelagic nations. We've got 44 million people in this region that rely on seaports as a matter of everyday life, and 3.6 million people that rely on a single seaport. And I think additionally, there are places like, I think Barbados, there's a figure that's somewhere between 80 and 85% of all goods that make it into the country come through the sole primary seaport with Barbados Port. And when we take these figures and we put them in the disaster management space, it's worth pointing out that these sort of things are not just a disaster response or a disaster recovery problem set. These are an everyday problem set, that dealing with the logistics and moving things through ports are a matter of making things happen in island nations and in communities that rely on seaports. So those ports, as the bottlenecks by which aid moves through, are essential for minimizing disruption to disasters. Within GSD, we have a couple maritime assets. The one that I think we're probably most well known for is we have a vessel, motor vessel Dawn, a purpose-built humanitarian vessel. We took a platform supply vessel, we put it in a shipyard and brought it down to its bones and then completely rebuilt it. The takeaway being that everything we put on the ship, we needed to justify by way of having some sort of humanitarian or disaster management impact. So really, we didn't take a ship that was meant for doing something and we're asking it to do something else. We really set about to say, if we were going to build a ship that was going to support this kind of operations, what were all the things that it would need to have? And that's motor vessel Dawn for us. Permanently stationed somewhere in the Caribbean. We don't home port her anywhere, and she's roaming around presently. 81 meters long, she can carry up to 990,000 liters of water. Based on stability reasons, there's always some maximum amount of water we're able to give away. We carry a good bit of diesel, that's the ship's fuel. The two cranes on the back are able to lift 24 tons. Point being, we can show up with Dawn to a disaster impacted nation where there is no shoreside support, and we're still fully capable of doing cargo operations. And then on board, we plan to be able to host 60 responders for a period of at least 30 days. Another one of our maritime assets is the Maritime Access Team. This is a small team of primarily commercial divers and former naval special warfare divers whose remit is to go into a port post-impact of whatever sort of disaster and gather the information that's needed to make a decision about should we keep the port open or closed. And then if we find hazards, if we find something that would restrict navigability or that would restrict the operations of the port, we'll find those problems and we'll salvage them. We'll get them out of the way. So the Dawn and the Maritime Access Team, both pre-staged in the Caribbean somewhere. They're presently pulling into Castries, St. Lucia this morning, with the intent to be, no further away than 24 hours out from the passing of a major storm or a major disaster. And we brought all of these maritime assets to bear last year in the response to Hurricane Beryl. We had our Maritime Access Team and Dawn pre-staged in Antigua while we watched Beryl run through. Hurricane Beryl was a major hurricane that impacted St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Grenada, all those islands in between. After the passing of the storm, we were within the impacted region within 48 hours of the passing of tropical storm force winds. At the primary cargo port facility in Kingstown, St. Vincent, there was a large catwalk that had been blown off of its base and was keeping that facility closed. We put our divers down, we located the catwalk, rigged it up to a crane, pulled it out of the water so we could reestablish operations at that port. In Carriacou and Grenada, we collected a bunch of underwater subsurface imagery. There had been a roof from a large warehouse that had been blown into the main channel that was keeping boats from coming in and out. So same sort of situation. We put the divers down, we cut up that hazard and removed it from the water. And then our Dawn and then our disaster response team spent 14 days in the vicinity of Union Island doing a whole manner of disaster response operations in that environment. And really what I wanted to spend the bulk of the time on is the lessons that we've learned and that we've had. Dawn in operation in the Caribbean going on 3 years. We've had the Maritime Access Team in operation for 2 years. And we're really coming into, seeing fewer and fewer things that we're dealing with for the first time. And one of the biggest things that we found by way of using our maritime asset is it offers us a tremendous amount of self-sufficiency in that we can house our people, we can feed our responders, we can make our own water, and then we're not giving a problem of sustaining our response teams, to a community that's dealing with the impact of a disaster. And even just being able to manage our own waste on board the vessel instead of giving that problem to a disaster impacted coastal community, that's been a tremendously useful thing that we're able to bring into a scenario. In the post-disaster setting where we don't have a ton of updated information about the security situation of a particular location, we've found that MARSEC, maritime security practices, have been a really, really good baseline for us understanding, what security protocols should we put in place as we go into different locations. I think that's a lesson that we've taken from the maritime world and have shared with the humanitarian community in that post-disaster security is a tough nut to crack. It's something that a bunch of humanitarian organizations struggle with when there's a lack of updated information. To being able to say that, hey, the maritime community has a really good way of dealing with this problem that you face. that's been good for us to bridge those gaps. And then access. Access when we're able to go into a place and reestablish operations at the port, or when we're able to take a maritime asset and get to a disaster impacted community that other organizations haven't been able to get to, we're able to get that flow of post-disaster information started. And we've found that port partners are critical in restarting that information, particularly in the Caribbean. The ports have become the hubs where information about what's happened in the rest of the island, it's become the place where that information is being shared most quickly post disaster. And then a couple challenges that we've found, and one that beyond actual language barriers between Spanish, English, Dutch, French, we have found that there's different technical language, and that someone with a robust business continuity plan and somebody with a well-formed disaster response plan, are speaking about the same functional things, but they're using different terminology. And we've found that it's been useful to try to put those kinds of people from those two different worlds into the same place to compare notes, to compare their plans, because a lot of what we're actually talking about is very, very similar. So that's certainly a lesson that we've learned. Less of a challenge and more just something that we deal with, and that we went out to build a ship that was as versatile as possible, that could do as many different things as possible. And we have found that people see what they expect to see. That for people who are interested in moving cargo, they see our asset as a cargo ship. For people that come from the medical and public health world, they see this as the means to impact, the post-disaster public health space. Folks that need water see us as a big water truck, which has been interesting in that we do value being able to have this versatile tool, but also wanting to make sure that we're meeting what the most effective need is. And we have found that in trying to articulate, the priority of post-disaster needs, people often default to whatever their technical background is. Water folks want to talk about water. Logistics folks want to talk logistics. We have found ourselves being sort of not unexpected, but unique arbiters of that conversation. The geographic spread, strength not a weakness if it's coordinated, and that through working with folks like Tropical Shipping and through working with partners like CDEMA, that being able to decentralize decision making and decentralize logistics support is absolutely huge. I think it's really easy to look at an island with a single port and say that this is a bottleneck that we need to be able to plan around. But if you take a more macro look at how these problems are sorted throughout the region, this is certainly a strength of Caribbean disaster management and being able to pull things from unaffected regions to support an impacted area. And then not a judgment, just an observation that there has been disruption aplenty in the humanitarian community based on funding decisions that have been made. And again, observation, not a judgment. What we're seeing is that this is placing more stress, not necessarily a bad thing, on the systems that already exist. The things that are already working well need to continue to work well. And we're seeing a lot more focus on, frankly, the maritime community's ability to move things as a constant that's helping sort some of this uncertainty. And then taking those lessons and moving them ahead. I think three primary areas where we see maritime actors, port preparedness having an increased role in the Caribbean sort of ecosystem of disaster management. And one is meeting immediate needs. That requires moving things around, and nobody's better at that in the Caribbean than the maritime community. Similarly, national response systems, that finding a way to plug resources into the national systems that are designed to meet national level needs. If there's an issue with the port, it only takes a very short amount of time for that to become a nationally significant problem. So the justification to have port actors and maritime actors with a seat at the table when talking about national level disaster response. That's as easy as a case to make as we think we've ever seen. And then lastly, the information and awareness link, that being able to get to a place and being able to start to contextualize the post-disaster impacts. A lot of that is being done on the backs of the maritime community that are able to get to places that other organizations, other sectors aren't able to get to. Now with that, thank you so much. Looking forward to some questions. Back to you, Mona.
Thank you so much, Brad. Thanks for giving us a little bit of insight into GSD's maritime operations, and also sharing with us some lessons learned. I'm always fascinated when I hear about Dawn. So congratulations on all the important work that you're doing in the region, and I'll see you later for the Q&A.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Next, and last but not least, we are joined by Kevin Campbell, logistics specialist at the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, we all know as CDEMA. Kevin is an accomplished emergency management practitioner with over 12 years working experience in multiple countries for different national, regional, and international agencies. He specializes in contingency planning, emergency coordination, and humanitarian logistics. He has an avid interest in process optimization, benchmarking, and the application of standards to emergency response operations and supply chain planning. He has been deployed to 7 major disasters over the past 9 years in numerous different capacities. Furthermore, he is a business continuity, policy, and project management professional. His career highlights include design and implementation of a digital end-to-end supply chain software system for 20 Caribbean countries, formulating disaster risk reduction plans, and designing multiple full-scale simulations for Trinidad and Tobago. He also holds a Master of Science degree with first-class honors in crisis and disaster management in person from the University of Portsmouth in the United Kingdom. And I just wanted to add in here that Kevin was also one of the experts that reviewed and vetted the plan that we developed, the Model Emergency Operations Plan. And I just wanted to thank you once again for your support in that. Again, that plan, it wasn't developed in a silo. We had the fantastic support from Hudson Analytics. I see Troy Vest is here on the call, so thanks so much, Troy, and shout out to you. And then, of course, the plan was vetted by CDEMA, by our colleagues from PMAC, CSA, TNT Salvage, Tropical Shipping, and, of course, the United States Coast Guard. So, Kevin, thank you once again for your assistance in developing that plan, and I pass the mic on over to you for your presentation.
Good day, everyone, and thank you, Mona, for the introduction. And thank you, OASIPS, for inviting the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency to this webinar. So what I will do, I will share my screen. And I would just like you to confirm that you can indeed see my screen. And it is actually in presentation mode.
It is, yes.
Okay, great. Thanks. All right, so as previously stated, I'm Kevin Campbell, logistics specialist at CDEMA, and I'll be presenting on the importance of regional coordination. My outline will be as follows. First, I would look at the regional agreements, followed by the realities of ports in the region, then look at an integrated response mechanism, and finally, delve into some collaborative frameworks, because all of these are critical when it comes to improving and fostering regional coordination. Right, first things first, I'll look at some regional agreements and CDEMA. Most of you will know CDEMA, but for those of you who don't, it is an institution of the Caribbean community responsible for comprehensive disaster management and integrated risk management. There are 20 participating states, and they're characterized by different levels of diversity in hazards and also capacities and capabilities. The agency is based in Barbados, where I am currently, and our most recent member is Dutch St. Martin. Now, the mandate of CDEMA is pretty wide, and it covers different areas. but the agreements by which govern CDEMA as a regional entity is critical. And there are three organs. Two of the main organs I would on this slide is one, the Council of Ministers. And what are these? This is the minister responsible for DRM in the Caribbean states. And they meet once a year. And also another organ is the Technical Advisory Committee. And this comprises of the national disaster coordinators of CDEMA participating states. They meet usually annually every April, and they provide technical guidance for the CDEMA CU. And the other organ is CDEMA themselves, so the CDEMA CU based in Barbados. And these entities and these organs work together to both set a coordinate response and DRM within the region. Under the mandate, it covers 6 areas, but the one most relevant, to the session is this one here in red, mobilizing and coordinating relief. A lot of relief, a lot of logistics. And it improves and provides immediate coordinated response and, in essence, establishes and maintains the adequacy and adequate disaster response capacities in the region. Also as important is this one down here, the promotion of integrated disaster risk management and resilience for CARICOM states. I'll now move on to some of the realities of ports within the region. Now, I'm going to look at some limitations, in particular, the operational and human resources. So these limitations are quite broad, but it's real. It's what living in the Caribbean and those of you who work in the region on a daily basis are aware of some of these limitations, are aware of these issues and challenges. And first one I'm going to speak about is the multi-island nature. So many countries have numerous islands, and that leads to limitations in response and continuity of operations, as it can become difficult to commit sustained physical resources in dependent islands. Yes. This point is vitally important. Multi-island states such as St. Vincent and Grenadines and the Bahamas require a larger quantum of human resources. This was the case in 2019 and 2024. There's also a requirement for the mainland to support and to supplement the human resource pool in these dependent islands. Due to the decreased capacity and down systems, the absence of information from governments on national customs procedures is a significant problem and issue. I mean, notwithstanding the obvious waiver of taxes and duties, the absence of like HS codes, guidance, clearance guidance documents, health specifics, etc., can pose a major problem. And as it pertains to point 3, government staff is often repurposed. I mean, many of you who were deployed would know how many times staff within government agencies have been repurposed, sent to other ministries, sent to other sections to do jobs, and that leaves a large gap in the ports. So that can be a critical issue that is real. And oftentimes inexperienced or unskilled workers are sent to do jobs on the port that they just aren't familiar with. Bottlenecks include port staff being overworked, overwhelmed, the absence of facilities and technology at smaller ports, structural vulnerability, the need for retrofitting, and flow of grid management is of utmost importance. In essence, the absorptive and restorative capacities are impacted. Moving on to integrated response mechanisms. Now, what I want to set out is that we understand the criticality of integration and having a response mechanism. And it's one of the hallmarks of coordination. And what I want to say is that many of you on this call would have been part of the regional response mechanism. And there are several benefits to having an integrated regional coordination mechanism. And the term is the RRM, Regional Response Mechanism. and CDEMA is responsible for the RRM. And what I want to do, I want to read verbatim what is the mechanism. And the RRM is a mechanism to provide efficient and effective coordinated disaster response support to CDEMA participating states, requiring regional and/or international assistance for their response to the consequences of an event based on regionally agreed principles, concepts, and realities. The RRM is really our bread and butter, and it's the way by which numerous agencies integrate and are actually part of our operations and our response operations. It ensures timely response, leverages numerous resources from different sources, from other states, regional entities, discipline forces, and international humanitarian agencies. And it abides by the principles of the UN principles of sovereignty, solidarity, and respect for partnership principles. What I have up here is a conceptual framework for the RRM. And on the left, you see the governance structure, whereby you have different agreements, MOUs, SOPs. I mean, if you look at tropical shipping, GSD, we have MOUs with these entities, and we do collaborate and we do work alongside these entities, and we do leverage resources from these entities to really bolster our overall coordination and overall response. We also have a donor partner group, CDPG, which I'll go into a bit in detail. And also, as part of the governance structure, different national plans and different regional plans. On the right side, we have the response units. These are the teams that are deployed, and they have specific mandates, whether it be disaster assessment or whether it be providing operational support, relief and logistics, communications, etc. You have different teams that can be deployed for different jobs on the field. And on top there, we have the CU, which is in Barbados. And at the bottom, we have 4 regional warehouses in 4 countries, notably Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, Antigua and Barbuda, and Bahamas, which provide pre-positioned resources and items and act as a staging area for impacted states. So all of these feed into the RRM, bolstering and improving the actual output of the mechanism. So one important node in terms of coordination is the Caribbean Development Partner Group. And this is a group that is co-chaired by the CDEMA director and the UN coordinator. And what it does is that it integrates national, regional, and international partners involved in disaster management. You have sector specialists, you have entities who can provide support like GSD, like tropical shipping, are all part of this group. And we usually meet if there's impending strike. If it's something like a cyclone, we meet before to look at preparedness, and then we have meetings throughout impact to update on the status of activities taking place in terms of response and with reference to what's happening on the ground. And these decisions are actioned through our regional coordination center here in Barbados. And what we have developed is thematic working groups within the CDPG to strengthen the entire coordination mechanism of the RRM. I just have a couple of photos up here from Hurricane Beryl last year. This is in our temporary, or was in our temporary RCC. Here you have individuals from numerous agencies. You have individuals from regional entities. You have UNDRR, you have WFP, UNICEF, different entities. So all come together to work and to plan and to coordinate responses and using our resources in the best manner. And just for photo, this is our main building in Lower Estate in Barbados. Right, now on to some collaborative frameworks. Now, as mentioned before, the thematic working groups are critical. And in terms of next level RRM, these working groups were prepared by both CDEMA and the United Nations Executive Technical Team, the UNET, noting deficiencies in the capacities in key response areas. Now, those of you in the Caribbean region who live in the region know that we do have different aspects that need improvement. We're lacking resources in some areas, we're lacking personnel. So this is a way in which you can augment some of the deficiencies. And it brings together partners and stakeholders. It enhances information exchange, knowledge transfer, and improves coordination of critical response functions. It's co-chaired by two entities. One, the most appropriate regional organization in partnership with the corresponding United Nations agency. For instance, for the thematic working group for relief and logistics, it's co-chaired by CDEMA and the UN World Food Programme, WFP. Actually, as a CDEMA, we have a joint work program, myself, with WFP. So we work really closely with them on all things relief and logistics related. Here are the other thematic working groups. There are 10 of them, but as I said before, to this group, the most pertinent is number 4 here, the Relief and Logistics Working Group. Onto the working group, and it is a framework that helps, so it's a really good framework that helps overall coordination for DRM, for ports especially. And what the group encompasses, well, as part of its vision and objectives, it integrates and meets with key stakeholders in the region and locally with expertise in relief and logistics. We have several meetings. I mean, I know Brad attends those meetings all the time, where we meet in peacetime and as we're activated to go through what can be done, where, and who does what where. What we also do is maintain upstream visibility of incoming supplies, because you would understand that into a port, you would have numerous different sources of supplies coming in, and you need to get a grip and have a track on as much as possible those supplies coming in. So we look at our range of mechanisms. We have different suite of programs and also collaborations and meetings and tools and toolkits that we use to really ascertain and to obtain information from different sources. And what we do, we map. And we use the available resources and match them to the needs on the ground. And we do a reconciliation of needs in tandem with the impacted state. Also down here, we have coordinating transport and movement of supplies. We have a logistics hub here in Barbados, newly built, to help with that storage and coordinating movement of supplies from Barbados. The group also facilitates incoming sewage support into our center, because we may need to deploy persons to ports or to impacted areas. So the group can source key and skilled persons to fill the gaps at impacted ports in impacted states. Also to engage national authorities to provide guidance to teams and personnel on the ground. And it's critical that we have as much data and information as possible from those impacted on the ground, so that can feed into improve our overall operations. I would also like to mention our exercises. We exercise a lot, and we undertake country-specific exercises. We help countries with their simulation, and we also undertake regional exercises, as what we did late last year with the Sea Bridge exercise between Barbados and St. Lucia. And my partners on this call, Tropical Shipping and GSD, are invited to this thematic working group. And what I want to do is just to briefly show you a repository. So there's a website that I hope you can see right here. We have a website that really gives a good repository for information pertaining to relief and logistics for the region. And if you want information on LCAs, capacity assessments, notes from different meetings, you can access this website and get a good appreciation and understanding of what's going on within the region with reference to logistics response. Okay, so back to the presentation. So I'm going to conclude with some improvements. So as mentioned before, coordination is vital, and we are working hard at improving everything. But there are some particular avenues that we would like to really hone in on at present and in the coming years. So one and two, we have port and customs emergency response teams. These are much akin to regional search teams, such as rapid needs and damage assessment. And we would like to develop these teams and include these teams in our suite of deployment teams, because we understand that when a country is impacted, you need the support to augment and improve the systems that have been downed. Also, the IDRL, the International Disaster Response Law, what it is, it's a body of principles that guides how the legal and policy framework of a country ought to be designed. And this is in order to keep and maintain the right balance between facilitation and regulation between the affected country and the incoming disaster relief actors. So CDEMA and IFRC have a joint work program on this, and it really provides the legal and policy framework for the management of incoming relief supplies and goods into a country, which can undoubtedly really help ports, because that can help alleviate all of the bottlenecks that ports have and improve that through flow within a port. So another solution is updating response strategies. Example, utilizing different storage units in St. Vincent following the volcano, where donations can be managed, and just having a better appreciation of the different realities on the ground and updating our templates and strategies. 5, we have insisting that national and regional governance documents include BCM, it's critical for ports. Also 6, standardization of a country's green light process. This was done for Beryl, and it facilitated the customs process for processing shipments in the St. Vincent and Grenada. And it can guide for future emergencies what can be done. And what it really showcases is that green light process of incoming supplies, waivers, and really stating everything upfront, what is there and what to expect for any entity willing to send supplies. Down here, we have a framework and model documents for countries. As what Mona mentioned, that framework emergency operations template is key, but more like that is needed for the countries, and not just BCM, but other aspects of disaster risk management. Also, maintenance of a common service/repository for relevant updates. Yes, the website is good and the thematic group is good, but we need countries taking ownership and having similar type of repositories in their specific countries. And lastly, more open dialogues like this, what we're doing now today, where continuous planning is brought to the fore and issues and challenges and best practices are brought to the fore. It's one thing to do it within a region or as how we are now, but we'd really like to encourage countries to do it and take initiative and do it in their specific territories. Okay, that's it for me. Thank you, and I hand it over to you, Mona.
Thank you so much, Kevin. A super informative presentation. And I would like to ask you if you could maybe drop the link to that website into the chat function so that our participants here and me as well later, I'm sure Jorge wants to take a look at that as well, we can get a direct access to it. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Kevin, and thank you to all our presenters for your most valuable insights. And we now have some time for questions, and I invite our 3 speakers back to join me here on the virtual stage. Brad, please join me, and Jennifer. Wonderful. My first question is, in fact, for you, Jennifer. Of course, tropical shipping operates in a region that is highly susceptible to natural disasters, and you spoke about the importance of your collaboration within the region as it relates to capacity building. And I know that you showed in your presentation, the first slide mentioned a workshop that you held in Antigua. And We always ask our speakers, keep it short and concise, 15-minute presentation. I know you can't talk about everything, but would you be able to share a little bit about that workshop and its objectives and how tropical shipping plays a role in these?
Thank you, Mona. In fact, as Kevin mentioned, this was a collaboration between the Antigua Barbuda Local Emergency Management Agency for in-country, CDEMA, the partners that we bring to the table in terms of experts, retired Professor Watlington, who has been part of our champions of what readiness looks like in the various aspect of disasters. And we brought our customers. There were a lot of private sector, the local government, police commissioners, police officers, ports, because we wanted a conversation to be how well do we coordinate a response mechanism with the partners? What could tropical shipping do? Who are the businesses in the marketplace or in the community that would be willing to come to the table to support that? We had almost 100 participants from the private sector, which was fascinating because business people generally like, I can't leave for 2 hours, much less to spend 4 hours talking about the specific vulnerabilities of Antigua and Barbuda and championing those causes. So the message really is it's about people, it's about cooperation and about collaboration. And I will tell you that out of that came an exercise that was really necessary, where the folks did a vulnerability analysis chart, and they had to do it very quickly, and especially for those who've never done one. And it was really fascinating to see where on the scope of, or rather on the scale of whether it's a hurricane, earthquake, what was Antigua's most vulnerable like, and what would they do to support CDEMA and the local emergency management agency, DDM, to get back together. It was really good. We were happy to do so and to be able to get the business communities to come along.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for providing a little bit more background, a little bit more detail about that initiative. That's wonderful. Brad, you mentioned in your presentation the importance of maritime access, and could you expand a little bit on your comments about maritime access and its role in initiating an effective response?
Yeah, absolutely. I think as we start to track things like storms, where we develop some pre-impact estimates of what we think might happen, and then there's a gap between those pre-impact estimates and the post-impact assessments. And in that sort of medium space is where we develop our plan for an effective disaster response. I think in terms of connecting access to information, I think it really comes down to risk. That if we contextualize risk as the impact of uncertainty on the pursuit of our objectives, I think being able to get to where something is to start to confirm assumptions, that helps us, not only mitigate risk, but even just start to understand it. And I think we've seen places in the Caribbean where a port response plan will say something to the effect of, we assume everything's okay until someone tells us that it's not. We'll be those people to go and see if there's, actually a problem. Let's validate that assumption so it's not just a piece of uncertainty.
Awesome. Thank you. Kevin, from your experience, your very extensive experience, what has been CDEMA's biggest challenge in coordinating response and overall disaster risk management activities in ports?
Yes, thanks for that question, Mona. Yes, as it pertains to ports in particular, I would say BCM and continuity operations, in particular for human resources. I mean, when a country is overwhelmed, especially in multi-island states, getting appropriately skilled and committed persons to undertake key technical roles is a real deal for this. And there needs to have more emphasis on this aspect of risk management. And when you do the analysis and you see what's there and available to countries, it varies. Some countries may have a lot more resources, can pull from different sectors, but some countries, especially the ones with dependent islands, there's a real lack of appropriately skilled persons to undertake key roles. And that creates a lot of lags. It creates a lot of separation when it comes to the response teams and the coordinating arms. And if you don't have that coordination on the ground and that those entities on the ground in the ports, then things back up, supplies back up, you have mistrust in the system. So that is our biggest issue when it comes to, DRM and coordinating response in ports.
Thank you. Brad, I'll go back to you. I see that Jennifer had to step away for a second. She's a very important person, so we'll give her a chance to address, hopefully not a disaster. You're back. I'll still keep it with Brad, and then I'll get back to you, Jennifer. How does an effective maritime response factor into the non-maritime elements of a larger disaster response, Brad?
Yeah, I think really Kavan started to hit some of this point, and that I think if we look at sort of I think there's a version of the history of disaster management in sort of the Caribbean basin, and it's that something bad happens, everybody gets to where they're able to get to, and they set up shop. And maybe that's where the greatest need is, but maybe it isn't. And I think we've seen that in sort of the disaster management space for response and recovery. Every problem is what it is. It's a water problem, it's a food problem, it's a medical problem, and it is also a significant logistics problem. So I think it's just a reality that for the people that want to engage on water, medicine, shelter, they must also engage with the maritime sector. So I think we're the sort of the delivery mechanism by which all of the other things are made possible. And so that collaboration is key.
Fantastic. And we've heard yes,
Mona,
please.
what Brad said is so on point, and I'll tell you, I was pretty impressed with the way he broke down the how you evaluate what those needs are. But he said something in his presentation that I really wanted to even drop a note in the chat. It is so strategically important that you have a team of experts that can come in to do a dive to determine what's in the port. Are there debris? Are there anything that can create a potential another disaster? So, Brad, I would want to encourage. I know the beautiful work that you guys have done. I love the MV Dawn, but I like this idea. If you could again reemphasize the technical staff that's available to ports who may not have divers or have to wait because they're dealing with or they're affected. One of the things that we do as a company is that we keep a list of professional certified divers who can go in that have a relationship with the authorities, coast guards throughout the location that can go in and assist the port. And we have come alongside and taken care of that on our own at times because we need to get the port open. And you don't want a ship coming in and their containers in the ocean, because then you create another disaster if it was a hurricane. Brad, I love that.
Brad, do you want to add anything?
Sure. Yeah. And I think really, so between these three organizations of CDEMA, Tropical, GSD with our one ship is never going to be able to move as much stuff as tropical shipping. And then I think we are also never going to be as close to sort of the humanitarian piece and the needs assessment conversation as CDEMA. But there's absolutely a piece where if a port isn't open and doesn't have the information they need to make a decision about should the port be open or should it remain closed, that's a blocker that keeps both of the other organizations being effective. So yeah, I think the piece of when we talk about our maritime access team, that it's not a huge team. It's a small team. It takes 3 people. But that is a critical thing that helps us overcome a barrier that frankly gets us out of the way so CDEMA and Tropical can get stuff to where it needs to be. But yeah, it's all based on the importance of confirming assumptions that factor into the planning. But yeah, thanks so much.
And that leads us back right to the key word, I think, of this session, right? It was, of course, a technical session we had today, but I think there were a lot of concepts that we should really, really remember. And one is collaboration. And Jennifer, you mentioned that in your presentation, that the collaboration among the various stakeholders, right, is key for efficient and effective disaster risk management. And how does Tropical work, with the port authorities, the maritime authorities, emergency agencies, and other stakeholders to create that coordinated response to disasters? And how do you ensure that these partnerships are effective during times of crisis, but also previous and after the disaster?
Excellent question, Mona. It as I said, or I alluded to, that no one takes your business card from you during a crisis. Who cares who you are and what you think? So you do this in advance. These relationships are required to be established in advance. What are the available resources in the location? What are the capacity of those available resources locally? And so conducting joint exercise, workshops, talking in summits like these, sharing concepts with ports, but also asking ports and port managers and leaders to step out of the normalcy that they may consider normalcy, or what they may consider these are the border lines that we can't cross. There's a question that I see my good friend Captain Raul Badarlu has in the chat that talks about, do customs, excise, and immigration participates? Because it's during these times that what I call the authorities responsible for allowing ships and cargo to come in, relief cargo, that should be in advance talking about what are we going to be doing ahead of this. So that question that Captain Badarlu put in the chat is important, that customs, immigration, excise ought to be talking about the rules of engagement ahead of time. CDEMA does a great job bringing them together. We have asked and have shown where it is necessary that certain restrictions that are normally applied, like if your systems are down, how do we get the paperwork that is still necessary for a port to ensure that safety and security is not being overlooked? Because we've seen a lot. We also believe that one of the things we've done very well with CDEMA and the local emergency management agency is to say, certify who are your acceptable community-based organizations that you would want in our space. For example, our company provide zero rates for the movement of relief cargo, but they must be on the list of approved by CDEMA or their local emergency management. Because God knows we don't want to see winter coats being donated to the Caribbean because we had a hurricane or disaster or whatever other things. Do it in advance. It must be done. And customs must understand its role during a disaster, how relief ought to be cleared to come into ports.
Thank you, Jennifer. Important point, and thank you for that question in the chat, Captain. Kevin, you have the final words, okay? My last question is for you, and it's also a little bit of look into the future. What would you say is CDEMA's vision for the next 5 years as it pertains to improving disaster risk management in ports? And I will be all ears and taking notes.
Thank you, Mona. And it really lends to Brad's point about having the vehicle by which you can solve issues and challenges. And so to answer the question, I'd say overall to improving, advancing our regional logistics program. This includes, and is of utmost importance, leveraging the capacities of partners, donors, and stakeholders, and really providing the means by which experts like those on this call can work together towards having common goals and common targets. And the newly established thematic working group is one example of taking it to the next level, but really having increased participation from different resources and different entities. And I know Jennifer mentioned the point about customs, and it's good just to have that out there because, like, when was it? Last month? Last month, I was part of CARTAC, which is the Caribbean Regional Technical Assistance Center, whereby we looked at different customs procedures and ways by which customs can be improved in the region, with different resources and different entities coming on the table. Much like how we do it for international disaster relief law, we're going to adopt a very similar model of having a joint program for customs, and because we realize how much of a challenge it is in the region and how much of a key bottleneck it is. And if you can alleviate some of this, then it really enhances and provides more fluidity throughout the entire supply chain, which is really why we're here, to really to really look at improving the continuum from upstream to downstream, from end to end. And that's really why we're here, to make it as best as possible. So having those different entities and having those different avenues by which we can tap into and improve, because solutions are there, we are working on it, but making it better, continuous improvement, always revisiting. It's an iterative process, and that's how you improve. So I would say that would be my answer for that question, Mona.
Fantastic. You had the perfect wrap-up summary. I had something prepared, but I feel you already said it all, and you did it so well. Thank you so much, Kevin. I would like to thank all three of you, Jennifer, Brad, Kevin, and of course our participants who have been very engaged in the chat for a truly informative and very engaging session. And it's clear that disaster risk management in ports is not just a priority for our region, it's an ongoing dynamic process that requires constant collaboration and adaptation. And I would say the key takeaways today are the importance of shared responsibility, clear communication prior, during, and post incident, and regional coordination in strengthening disaster resilience across the Caribbean and the Americas as a whole. And before I pass the mic on over back to Jorge, I would just like to briefly plug again the Model Emergency Operations Plan. My colleague Monica posted it in the chat. This was part of our disaster risk management project phase 1. So if there's a phase 1, there has to be a phase 2. We finished the design phase of phase 2. We are currently in communication with donor organizations and partners to collaborate with us in this second phase. And I mentioned previously when we chatted here with our speakers, Jennifer, Brad, Kevin, we'll certainly talk to you about how you can partner with us in this important second phase of that project. And with that, I pass the mic back over to Jorge. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mona, and thank you, Jennifer, and Brad and Kevin for outstanding presentations. I think that, like you said, Mona, I was taking a few notes and wanted to conclude, but I think the speakers have done that themselves in a wonderful fashion. So I'll save everybody that headache. I just wanted to congratulate each one of them, for they are three different perspectives of how to be a positive sort of mover in disaster risk management and mitigation and so forth. We have Jennifer with her view on it and all her recommendations. And by the way, I would agree with you that there's not four pillars to a preparedness, disaster recovery, mitigation, whatnot, but that collaboration or partnerships that you mentioned, I would sort of conceive that as a cross-cutting element that needs to be present in all four stages. And that collaboration is fantastic. And then, of course, we had Brad with the actual ship, and what he said, that everybody sees what they want to see depending on their needs. And this is important. And then, of course, Kevin's presentation on CDEMA itself. So I really want to thank our audience, like Mona said, for their engagement and their participation. I have shared on chat the link to the webinar section of our portal, where you can find today's presentations and, in fact, all the presentations and recordings of all the webinars we've ever had in a myriad of different thematics. We have cybersecurity, we got digitalization, we have sustainable port operations, we have inclusiveness, diversity, gender equity, corporate social responsibility. Anyway, take a look. I hope that you like it, and of course, the link to the plan and to the educational and capacity building materials of this project that Mona headed very successfully is also available in the SIP portal. And I'm writing as we speak the address of our portal uh, so that anybody that is interested. So again, thank you to the audience, and I want to thank Jen and Brad and Kevin, and I'll give them the floor so that they can say a final word. Why don't we do Kevin, Brad, and we'll finish with Jen. So Kevin, please go ahead, final words.
Um, in terms of final words, I would like to say that in terms of collaboration and more of this is needed, and with reference to understanding each other's capacities, but also understanding each other's limitations, and where we can all step in and where we can work together to improve. So, I mean, I've mentioned a lot in my responses to the questions, but I think more of this and more exercises, I think that's critical, and improving our mechanisms every day. That's what I would like to say. Over.
Thank you. Thank you. Brad?
Yeah, the ditto. The Kevin nailed it. Stay safe, take care of yourselves, take care of each other.
Indeed. Short and sweet. Jen?
Excellent. That's exactly what I'll say. Take care of each other, take care of your people so they can take care of all of us. Well done. Thank you again.
Yes, well done indeed. And again, I failed to mention the regional response network that you guys at CDEMA have created. I think that will, as Mona said, I thank you for sharing that link, because we will look at that, and we'll look at the webpage as well. So again, our speakers, thank you. I see some clapping hands floating on the screen, which are very well deserved. To you all, again, thank you for lending us your expertise, your knowledge, and your time. We realize you're all important, as Mona said, and have things to do. So thank you for spending time with me and with all the C people. Again, my thanks to Monica Blanco for organizing the webinar, to Mona Swoboda for a masterful moderation. And we have, please visit the portal for upcoming webinars. I believe we have one in September. September 11th, I believe, is our next webinar. So please do check us. And again, the portal is full of useful informational resources that you can just download for free and take a look at. Anywhere from a risk analysis matrix, because we're looking at that and assessing vulnerabilities and what this will, the impact of that. And there's a matrix on the tag for port security and protection on that. So please do take a look. So thank you so much. Big hugs, and until our next time, wish the best to you all.
Thanks so much.